Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to round 2 of the Racing Team Astra, the RTA Invitational for 2022, as brought to you on the sim racing platform known only as Gran Turismo Sport. Brought to you by Sony Interactive Entertainment in collaboration with Polyphony Digital, the sim racing platform, which will be slowly moving over towards Gran Turismo 7 within the coming weeks with the arrival of Gran Turismo 7. But indeed, this series is looking to give a big send-off with a bang to Gran Turismo Sport, which has been a key part of a number of participants, indeed many of our lives, over the last 4 to 5 years with regards to our sim racing experience on the PlayStation 4 and more recently on the PlayStation 5 console. But our schedule for tonight, as you can see on screen, is as follows for this semi-final B. We'll be getting underway with qualifying in terms of times. That'll be Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or UTC, at 7 o'clock this evening. That'll be the 10-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of the race. And then we'll be kicking off our 25-lap race at 7:07 this evening. It'll be the case that our drivers will be going fast, they'll be going furious, and the circuit that they're going to be racing at today is a circuit which many of you, I think, will appreciate and, are going to be looking forward to foremost. Indeed, our drivers have been looking forward to this one. It is a favourite circuit on Gran Turismo Sport, but more on that in a brief moment. Now, who am I? I'm your commentator and your host, and that is Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight, whether it be on YouTube, where you can tune in via my personal YouTube channel, that is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 TX on YouTube. Alternatively, if you are so Twitch inclined, you can tune in via my personal Twitch channel, and that is twitch.tv/TX141. But as I say, this is semi-final B. There are 2 semi-finals running in parallel. We're covering semi-final B with 13 drives. There is another one being brought by a separate member of the commentary team in semi-final A, but we'll be focusing on our 13 participants and seeing how many of them make it through come at the end. Now, who are our participants for tonight? Well, you can see the list of drivers here, the 13 drivers, with 12 of them making it through from the previous pools in round number 1, albeit it is the case that we haven't quite got just simply the drivers who made it through from pool 4, which we covered last time. It's a mixture of drivers. They've been assigned here based on their performances over their respective pools in round number 1. And we also do have a returning wildcard driver, a driver who didn't quite make it through in terms of finishing within the top 6 of their respective pool, but they've been brought in simply as a wildcard because they were the next best performer. And we do like to give that invite out to a driver who was not quite there, but has the opportunity to get in just on their outright pace. Now, we can see here with the list, we do have a number of drivers from Racing Team Astra, or RTA in short. We've, for example, got GMP, we've also got Kalinin, Stiganator, and then we've also got RTA Safa in what is the number 8, and we also have number 11 there, RTA Viper. However, it's not just about Racing Team Astra drivers. As we can see, we've got Janali there, the number 4 driver, Dynamic Gene. We've also got BKC Chris at number 6. We've also got their NLR Prelude Gen 04, who unfortunately will not be participating tonight, and instead will have a driver standing in, the next best driver who will be coming in for them as a replacement, if you will. And I can just confirm to you with regards to the fact that whilst we will not be seeing Prelude Gen and his infamous Audi R8 LMS take to the circuit tonight, indeed that absolutely stellar performance in Pool B, which should not go, Pool 4 I should say, which should not go understated from round 1 last time out. Instead it will be Kalinen's son, in fact, who will be taking over from him. And we are waiting on the username for Kalinen's son, but we will get that for you as soon as possible. I can also confirm that with regards to number 9 there, GTB Chatura GTB P Chatura, I should say, referring to Pierre Chatura in full from Gran Turismo Boardless Esports. He will unfortunately not be able to take part tonight due to personal circumstances. He will be hosting the lobby that our drivers are racing in, but he will not be taken to the tarmac. And we do believe there is going to be another GTB driver who is standing in for him, but we'll get confirmation on that as soon as possible for you. Otherwise, we can see a fellow GTB driver there of Pipo Ollie, who will be in car number 10, if you will. And then we've also got returning there, number 12, that's KBR's Gillaburin. We also have the wildcard there of BGR_DMan GT_58, who made it in based on pace within the round 1 pools, or the quarterfinal pools, if you will. Now, going from our drivers, let's go to the track. And we are at Dragon Trail Seaside, the fictional circuit generated particularly for Gran Turismo Sport, a newly introduced circuit with regards to the Gran Turismo series as of this title, located in Croatia, along the coastline of Croatia. It is the case that this circuit, and you can see from the image provided to us by GranTurismoFandom.com, is a circuit which is much loved for the simple reason it has a little bit of everything, but on top of that, it has perhaps the ultimate thrill seek in the form of turns 15 and 16, as you can see on the circuit map there, which form the chicane known as the chicane of death. The reason being, it is a very narrow chicane which you attack it at full speed, and when you're on the perfect lap in qualifying, you want to go through there practically full throttle, if not deadly on full throttle, and as a result, just one slight error can see a driver going into the wall, but when you get it perfect, it is the ultimate adrenaline rush, and it means your lap time goes to the roof. But there's more to Dragon Trail Seaside than just simply the chicane of death. As you can see based on the circuit map, after a long run on the start finish straight through the kink of 1 up into 2, 3, that's the first of 3 chicanes that make up this circuit, with turns 2 and 3 making up what is effectively the lowest speed chicane out of all of them here. Then we've got the run around what is the U-bend of turns 4 through to 7, where this is a combination of course with a very tricky curb to navigate at turn number 5 indeed. It's a bit of a flick corner in terms of you throw the car into the corner, but if you attack the apex curve a little bit too closely, you'll see the car launched into the air. Turn 6 being a more of a traditional right-angled hairpin, and then you've got the second chicane of turns 8 through to 11, or really turns 8 through to 10, but 11 follows on from there, which is a medium speed chicane, a fast-flying chicane, where you're building up towards top speed in the run down the hill from turns 11 down towards 12, the ultimate hairpin, and then we've got the run up towards the chicane of death, the third and final chicane there at turns 15 and 16, before another hairpin-style corner completes the lap at turn number 17. Now, as for our rules for tonight, you can see the general rules here is that drivers shall be driving Group 3, that's GT3 class cars, and they shall be running fixed setups as determined by the Gran Turismo Sport Group 3 Balance to Performance, as designated by Polyphony Digital. Drivers are only permitted to use the race's soft tyre for both qualifying and the feature race. Mechanical damage has been set to heavy, meaning drivers must pit to repair damage. There's no magical repair work on the car. If they do take engine, or dirty suspension or aero damage, they must come in to repair it or press on all the same. And traction control, once again, is prohibited, so no TCS systems active on any of these cars, and that means with the feature race being a grid start with a full start check, our drivers will need to nail it with regards to getting the RPM band nailed on and balancing the throttle pedal before going full throttle when they launch the car from the start finish line. And in terms of who advances to the final, it will be the top 6 finishers, once again, who make their way to the final. And I do understand there will be no wildcards going into the final, so it will be 6 drivers from semi-final B, which we're covering, and the other 6 will be made up of the top 6 finishers from semi-final A, where it's going to be on the line then tonight. And it will be the case that you've got to be right up there, and a circuit which requires you to go all in to get the best possible result. Well, we go from our rules and regulations and whatnot to our live pictures, and as you can see right now, everybody just parked up waiting to go here, although we do have a couple of drivers out of the circuit at this current point in time, and it would only be fair to show everybody around right now, as we can see that the will be the starting procedure in 8 minutes time with regards to qualifying. And we do have here RTA Kalinen in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, deciding to go for that car, parked up, and I think we do have what is also another driver alongside him there, and that is Pietro. Let's see if we can get a better camera angle. And indeed, both of them from Racing Team Astra parked up together here to get a little bit of publicity time, a little bit of advertising time for the sponsors there, and both bring the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. And you can see the Italian parked alongside his Greek teammate here. Of course, they race as independents. There may be a little bit of teamwork, but at the end of the day, this is a knockout series, as we do see the switch over there to qualifying. So all of our drivers now will be looking to get themselves set for the qualifying session. But the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, a very interesting choice of car here. Used to be perhaps the strongest car in the GT3 class outside of the Toyota Supra. However, since a balance performance update in the mid portion of what was 2021, if I remember correctly, it was the case the Aston Martin V12 Vantage did have some of its advantages taken away, particularly its 6th gear was neutered to an extent. I mean, this car still has absolutely blistering acceleration, but the downside is now in top gear it does lose out to a degree. Also, a bit of weight added to the car, meaning that this car is now a little bit more aggressive on its tyre wear, and that does hold it back a little bit in long-term racing. But in fact, the Aston Martin is going to be very strong here tonight, given that this is technically a power circuit. Dragon Trail Seaside, whilst it does have a handling sector in the form of Sector 2, it is predominantly a power circuit, and as a result that will mean the raw grunt of the V12 6-litre engine in that British machine will be brought to life. We also look further around here, we can see Stiganator making his way down and around and into the middle section, coming through the medium speed chicane right now, or what is the Sector 2 chicane, and as he rolls on through the South Africa driver from Team RTA running in the Toyota Supra, and this being the all-rounder of the car, as we did mention last time out Red Bull Ring in round number 1, where it was featured by a number of drivers. This car having a little bit of
everything and really considered to be, imagine if you were driving a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, but the engine's in the front, which technically makes it front engine rear-wheel drive, and that is exactly what you got in this Toyota Supra, in the fact this car just seems to have the handling characteristics, but also great power. The downside of this car here, it's not quite as strong on the power compared to the likes of the Aston Martin, which may mean it falls a little bit short until we get up into 6th gear, and there are a couple of places where 6th gear will be exposed, particularly the run out to turn 17, which Stiginator is going into right now, and all the way round towards turn number 2, the start of the first chicane. But it will be the case the Supra is going to come on strong here, and it's normally a picked car whenever there's a daily race at Dragon Trail Seaside, but we'll have to wait and see whether our Supra driver, indeed any other Supra driver, can make it work. We've also got RTA Viper, the Greek driver here, once again bringing the Corvette C7. A bit of an odd pick here, I would say, the Corvette C7. It's going to be powerful on the straights, but this car may struggle a little bit in Sector 2, particularly when the medium speed chicane with those direction changes, which is something the Corvette not too happy with regards to direction changes, particularly when they're back-to-back and very sudden. It can cause the car to understeer a little bit, and when the driver wants it to move under direction. Also, the chicane to death may be a bit tricky for this car for the simple reason, again, getting the nose pointed in. However, the upside is the Corvette very planted when it's at high speed, and that means when it hits these high curbs, and you can see right now going around the circuit as Viper goes around, you can see how those curbs are very gradually slanted away from the track surface, and then they drop off very sharply when they go into, say, the grass, alternatively into the gravel, the runoff areas. And that is something which our drivers will need to be careful about, in the fact they can use a lot of the curb, but if they use too much, then the outside wheels will be pulled off circuit due to the down slant, and as a result that can cause the driver to lose control. But the Corvette will be very stable across those curbs, much like the Supra. In fact, the Supra will be stable across them, so that's where the Corvette can pick up. It can abuse the curbs a little bit more compared to its peers. We can also see here KBR Gillibrin bringing the Toyota Supra here, another Supra driver, as the South African makes his way on through turn 1, and we expect great things from Gillibrin once again. And then our wildcard for tonight, we can see BGR D-Man GT58, and we're going to be referring to him as D-Man from this point onwards. Also deciding to bring the Supra here. We've got quite a few Supras already. And then we do have GTV's Peeper Ollie here as he makes his way through, bringing the Corvette once again. And well, we can see Peeper Ollie making his way through. He was very comfortable at the Red Bull Ring in the Corvette, to be fair. Very smart in his application of the car's straight line speed acceleration, also using short shift into fuel saving the Corvette, which is what you have to do to get the best possible fuel efficiency out of the car as he makes his way down into turn number 2. And then we do have here Dynamic Gene as he makes his way through in the Audi R8 LMS. Well, now that is a surprise, but a very welcome one, in the fact we are seeing another Audi take to the circuit tonight. Now, the Audi is going to be a very difficult car around here for the simple reason it doesn't have the straight line speed compared to its peers, but what it does have is phenomenal handling in medium speed corners, and that is where you can imagine Dynamic Gene, the South African driver, will look to do everything they can to get an advantage, particularly as they go downhill here from turn 7 all the way through to turns 8 and 10. This is where the Audi is going to come alive, and also through that opening chicane, turns 2 and 3, the Audi will be quite strong in terms of the rear end coming around very rapidly under braking through turn 2, particularly if that brake bias is slanted towards the centre or the rear. But of course, if it's towards the rear, then that will expedite the tyre wear on the rear tyres. Now, we've also got we've got BKC Chris here bringing the BMW M6 Gt3. Now, I can tell you that, as we spoke about last time at Red Bull Ring, if you're looking for a car which falls into the quote-unquote power category of Group 3 within Gran Turismo Sport, but it has handling characteristics, this is the car. You look at the BMW M6, because whilst it does have a very beefy V8 souped up with a twin-turbo system, it is the case that this car is quite strong at handling, also very stable over the raised curves here at Dragon Trail Seaside. And having spent a lot of time driving this car around here personally, I would argue that it is going to be one of those cars which, if Chris can get it nailed lap after lap, it'll be right up there. It'll lose out a little bit on the straights, but if tucked in the slipstream being set to real distance and 0.75 seconds in closing, there's no reason why the M6 can't take him through to the final. Of course, with his driver ability being in the mix. We look a little bit further around still, and well, we talked a little bit earlier about GM Pietro, or RTA's GM Pietro, I should say. I believe that's his full name, unless I'm mistaken, but we're referring to him as GMP from this point onwards. In the Aston Martin, we also have Kalina making his way around in the Aston Martin, and then we do have Safa bringing the Toyota Supra, and I believe that is everyone accounted for, apart from Jun Ali here, and we can see here the South African is bringing the Nissan Gt-R. Well, now that is a pick and a half, for the simple reason the Nissan Gt-R, a very, very strong car within the Group 3 classification on Gran Turismo Sport. The only downside to this car now is the fact that it's lost a bit of grunt in its 6th gear, but beyond that, you could argue this car is up there to rival the Toyota Supra. The only other thing it lacks compared to the Supra is with increasing tyre wear, this car becomes incredibly unstable, particularly in 2nd gear, where all of the power is concentrated. 2nd, 3rd and 4th is where the Gt-R is indomitable with regards to just how strong it is in terms of that turbo, giving it a huge amount of performance. But as tyre wear increases, those rear tyres really do become lit up, and as a result, it can make it a very tricky car to master. But generally, if you can get it done here, that Gt-R is going to be incredibly strong. There's no doubt about that. But now, with only, well, it's less than a minute to go, as we say hello in the chat there. And we can see that in the YouTube chat in particular, a good number of you tuned in, which is great to see, including GT Fusion, Sir Bottle Job, and also Robert McCall. And I hope you're all doing well and you're having a great weekend so far. What with it, of course, being a Saturday at the moment, and we're almost halfway through the weekend. And of course, we don't want to rush through the weekend because we don't want to go back to work on Monday morning. But it's something that confronts us. But in the meantime, hopefully, a good amount of racing today and some fantastic racing ahead will make you think less about your work woes. And well, we're looking forward to seeing who is going to be making it through to this final. We kick things off, of course, with a qualifying session, which should be getting underway any moment now as the clock strikes 7 o'clock GMT, and we are now just waiting for the go-ahead from our lobby host, and that is, of course, GTB's PS Shatura, who, whilst he would have been racing tonight, unable to race due to personal circumstances, but will be hosting the lobby, and we look forward to seeing how it's all going to go down. In terms of the form we're expecting, I would expect the Toyota Supras are going to be up towards the front in terms of qualifying. I think the Aston Martins will also be there, but it will be the case. It should be a Supra, All-30 and Aston Martin on pole, and then we'll be seeing the other drivers full in behind. But of course, that is just based on the cars, and assuming equal drives across the field. Will it turn out like that when qualifying gets underway? That we'll have to wait and see. Tyre wear and fuel consumption today at ×3, and there is the countdown, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for qualifying. 10 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? Let's find out. So as we now wait for all of our drivers to come out of the pit lane here and make their way around, you'll see it'll be a frantic dash out of the pits when they are permitted to leave, for the simple reason we're a limited amount of time available. Everybody will want to get in the best possible qualifying lap as soon as they possibly can. As we see it, Donald Jean here making his way through turn number 1, the Audi. And I say it's a bit of an odd choice of car here, the Audi R8, because it is a handling car at Power Circuit. But if anybody can make it work, he definitely thinks he can, as they all make their way on around. Now, how strong is Slipstream going to be in qualifying? It can be very strong here. Dragon Trail Seaside. Slipstream can gain a driver somewhere in the region of about 4 to 8 temps, depending on how the lap is set up, and that's something all of our drivers will be very cognizant of. And particularly Team RTA, who do have a number of drivers within this field, they may be looking to try and set themselves up to Slipstream train one another as they make their way around. As we see Gillibrand there using a little bit too much of the entry grass there into turn number 8, expanding the width of the corner a bit too much as he makes his way on through. And these soft tyres will work very nicely for a good number of qualifying laps. They won't have to worry too much. They'll last at least 2 flying laps before they'll need to come in and potentially change them, as we do see there Pipo Oli coming on through. And we say hello to Stefan Vessels in the YouTube chat there. Hope you're doing well, Stefan. And your comment, super, it's really good here, but in the right hands and soft tyres, that Gt-R is a beast indeed. And it is the case. I do reckon that if Jun Ali is able to nail it in that Gt-R, that is going to be the beast from the east. Godzilla, as it's also nicknamed, will be coming alive here. And I do think Jun Ali has picked a car which many will be trembling about right now. But we go from trembling about him to looking at Arte Kalinen as we ride on board with the Greek driver as he takes us around for the opening flying lap of this qualifying session and also our lap guide. So coming out of the final corner and through the kink and onto the start-finish straight here, going onto the lap, you see the timing line, there we go. And now charging all the way through, going up to top gear here as he makes his way through the right-hander at turn number 1, up into 6th gear and getting ready to brake down, looking for his brake marker, which will be the one repeatable on the right-hand side, and coming down through the gearbox to 2nd gear, flicking the car into the chicane and then accelerating over the apex there at turn 3. And to lift off the throttle a little bit unsettled mid-apex there, and coming through the kink of 4 and now into 5, throwing the car in here, staying in 5th gear, flat out, riding across the apex curve, and now bringing it down the gearbox to 2nd gear onto the apex to 6th before getting back on the throttle as soon as possible, and now making his way over the ridge. That's sector 1 complete. coming down through turn number 7, flat out, putting the car to the right side and braking into the medium speed chicane, coming down a gear to 4th, balancing the throttle before immediately getting back full throttle and committing to full throttle through 9 and then 10. Flat out here, using those apex curves, a little bit unsettled there over the apex of turn 10, just dipping a wheel too low on the curb, and now coming through the kink of 11 and down into 12, the slowest corner on the circuit. Coming down the gearbox at the 100 metre board and making his way into second gear and then accelerating through him to balance the throttle initially before getting on the loud pedal completely, and now fully committed here as he rolls his way through 13 and 14 and into the chicane of death he goes. Now, will he go full out or will there be a brief lift? It's going to be a little bit of a lift here, but you can see the speed he's trying to carry through there in excess of 135 miles an hour, and that was quite clear of the walls, but you can imagine, I think it's the case that Pivo Ollie hit the wall going through. Now as he makes his way into turn number 17, the final corner, braking at the 75 metre board, and it is the case, will not board between the 100 and the 50, looking for 75 metres distance, coming down the gearbox and now accelerating back through to complete lap, cutting the kink there in order to shorten the run to the start finish line, but I try to be careful about cutting it too much. It's a 36.0 to kick off proceedings. We can see immediately Gillibrand not as fast at 36.6, Stiganator at 36.2. Meanwhile, RTA GMP sets what was the provisional pole before then D-Man GT improves upon it to a 35.921, the second of our 35s that we've seen so far. More times coming on in, but I think a number of drivers have had to abort, and people only had to jump back to the pits for hitting the wall through the chicane of death. And well, anybody else who's brought in a lap so far, it's the case. Well, I'm hearing that Janelli set 36.6 in the Nissan Gt-R RTA Viper we're looking at here. 41.3, not a good start to his qualifying session. I think he had to abort the lap towards the end. It all went horribly wrong, and now they'll be working again as they go on to their second flying lap. Now, we can see there in the YouTube chats, we say hello to Weza SA, and I believe that's Weza South Africa. And as he makes his way, well, as our drivers make their way around, it is the case. Is this the only race night? No, there is only going to be the one race within the lobby here in semi-final B, but there is also semi-final A, which is happening in parallel with what's happening here right now, and that is being broadcasted by a separate commentary team at this point in time. But you're tuning in to semi-final B, and we will have a 25-lap race, and that will be the only race that we have in this semi-final. But as the drivers continue to make their way on around right now, we can see that Robert McCall, how do you know who's who? And, well, at the end of that, I think you might be referring to who's who in terms of actual names, or they have to clarify that for me. And where's the SA? Okay, assuming that Coquetzo is in the other session, I do believe he is in semi-final A. Where's he's not in this lobby, I can definitely tell you that, as our drivers continue the way around and come to the end of their second flying laps here. And we can see D-Man GT coming on through. Well, we see there Gillibrand improves to 36.2. D-Man GT coming across the line. He was in the slipstream, he does not improve. But meanwhile, RTA Viper does move up to P6 there with the draft of what is GMP, but it's not enough to get him right up towards the front. In fact, he's demoted by RTA Safa, improving to 36.1. All the lap times are now coming on in from our drivers, and it is quite interesting to see how so far it is the Toyota Supra, as we predicted, of D-Man GT that is currently provisional pole by 300ths ahead of what is the Aston Martin of GMP right now, but they're inseparable in terms of lap time, and GMP going around once again here, going purple in Sector 1 by 2 tenths. He does have a bit of a distant toe of one of the fellow RTA drivers there. That's Stiganator just a bit further up the road, but Stiganator getting a much better run through Sector 2 so far, through the chicane of turns 8, 9 and 10, and you can see he's already dropped GMP quite considerably, as it is the case. I think Stiganator also trying to put in the best possible lap as they make the way on around. But the thing is now, with regards to this qualifying session, it's so critical, and you'll see at the race start why it's so critical to be towards the front. It's a long run down towards turn number 2, and you want to be right there. You do not want to be in the mid-pack, and GMP still purple of everybody after 2 sectors by 1.5 tenths. It's looking a good lap from the Italian right now as he makes his way on through, coming barreling through the chicane of death there. What was 131, quite a slow average speed through there, but to be fair, the amount of speed he carried afterwards is absolutely sensational. I think GMP here could be on for raising the bar for provisional poles. We do see D-Man GT coming through. P-Rolly sets a 36.658, albeit that's not putting him within the top 8 so far. It's the case the Corvette driver struggling. Gillibrand improves to 36.1, that's provisional P4. GMP comes across the line, it is provisional pole by a 10th per second, and that is a 35.8. Now, can D-Man respond, or could we potentially see somebody else move their way up the order with 3 minutes to go? Now, as our drives continue to make their way on around, we can see BKC Chris at the moment, the BMW M6, the slowest of everybody, on a 37.6. It's not working out with the M6 at this point in time, whilst it is a bit of an odd choice at this circuit, given the fact it's more of a handling car rather than a power car within the quote-unquote the power class of front-engine rear-wheel drive machines. I think the Frenchman here may have just bitten off a little bit more than he can chew with regards to this qualifying session. But again, qualifying is just one aspect of tonight. It's not what gets you through to the finals. He gets a little bit of a tank slapper there on the exit of turn number 6 and has to stop the car and bring it under control before going racing once again. Just a little bit too early on the pound. I think he may have put the rear left-hand tyre just beyond track limit. But meanwhile, we can see RTA Safa here currently provisional P4, and it is definitely the case right now. Safa pressing off 36.1. That gives him only 5 thousandths of security to Stiganator, who'd love to get onto that second row. It's a very close qualifying session, and you can see now as well when we look at the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen how everybody's quite close on the circuit to one another, but a couple of drivers are now spreading out a little bit, and I think they're feeling actually they can get their best possible laps in if they run in clear air and try and catch someone ahead of them a bit later in the lap. Now for Safa, as he comes through, as Kalina improves to 35.9. Goodness me, get my timings correctly. It is the case. Kalina moves provisional P3, and well, we continue to watch Safa as he makes his way down to turn at number 17, rolling the car down through the gearbox into second gear. Some drivers like to take this corner in third gear, others in second, depending on the gearing of their choice of car. D-Man GT moves provisional pole for 35.7. Now can Safa improve as he comes across the line? I think it's going to be quite close. He does improve, but it's not enough to move him further out the order. It just gets him a little bit further away from Stiganator, who now has to close down almost half a tenth. It is approximately 44 thousandths to Stiganator from Safa at this point in time. You can see Stiganator now tucking in behind his teammate GMP as he makes his way into turn number 6. But the fastest man on the circuit right now in this qualifying session, 1 lap left. Unless he's able to squeeze in, it's going to be very tight in terms of squeezing one more lap in. It is D-Man right now who is fastest on a 35.7 by half a tenth versus GMP. But the margin's so close here, and I think D-Man's just had the perfect lap, and perhaps also a little bit of toe, although we can't confirm that because we didn't see him on the lap. But it is the case, D-Man GT getting it very, very nicely hooked up, as we did see Viper there run a little bit wide coming out of turn number 10, just carrying a bit too much understeer on the front end of the Chevrolet Corvette. And as he makes his way down through the hairpin here of turn number 12, you can see the car just simply glazing its way through the corner. It's almost as if it's gliding through, and Viper they're having to abort lap, not happy, and he'll be going again at once more. He will be able to go onto another lap so he doesn't get it wrong here through the chicane. He keeps it together, albeit you can see that unsettled by dropping into the apex of turn number 16, and as he makes his way up to 17 now, he'll need to settle down, and he may miss out on getting one more lap in fact. It's going to be very close as Peter Harley improves to P9 of 36.5, and he will have one more lap, but we do look up to Viper here. Will he get across the line in time? It's not enough time, so Viper is going to miss out on improving, and it will be P8 at the highest. So Stiganator improves to 35.998. Now, who else is coming around at this time? We can see that's P10 driver. Dynamic Gene improves, but doesn't move up the order. In the engine, Ali stays P7 in the Gt-R. Who else is coming across that line? We can't quite see at the moment. Well, BKC Chris improves, but stays provisional last there, and that'll be where Chris qualifies. P11 on 37.5. What about elsewhere around the circuit? Well, we can see there D-Man GT has backed off completely. And well, a provisional pole lap there. I think he feels as though he's got it done, but we can see here GMP acts as a little bit of a tow magnet with regards to pulling along Stiganator. They're trying to improve their respective laps here, trying to get Stiganator a bit further up the order, perhaps to get an RTA lockout on the front row. It'll be interesting if they can do it, but GMP gets it a bit wrong there, coming out of turn 10, a bit too much curve, and as a result he drops down, and that's going to cost him the lap time he needs. And now he will firmly be in the position where he's pulling Stiganator along, but I think Stiganator's getting a bit too close here. I think GMP's going to consider moving out the way because he might be compromising his teammate's lap at this point, and you can see GMP down. Well, that Stiganator, he's not personal best right now as they make their way through the chicane. Def a little bit of graze of the wall there, and as they come through, Stiganator's into the wall, and the chicane claims the driver again, as it is the case that Stiganator just got it wrong on entry, and that is his qualifying session done and dusted. Gillibrin, meanwhile, coming on through the final corner, and will the South African be able to improve from P6? Because remember, starting P6 will mean that he's in the final of the qualifying positions for the final, as he makes his way across the timeline. And well, I do apologise, ladies and gents, but just having some very slight technical issues with some equipment in the background, and that's just been fixed out. We just had a brief, I think we had a slight power cut with regards to our broadcasting TV, but it is the case that's all come back now. Hopefully nothing too bad there, but qualifying is complete, and it's D-Man GT who takes pole position.
So as we pan down to the grid here for semi-final B, 25 laps at Dragon Trail Seaside, you can see on pole it's D-Man GT with GMP alongside, Colleen and Stiganator on row 2, Safa and Gillabrin on row 3, Janali and Viper on row 4, Peepo, Ollie and Dynamic Gene on row 5, and then BKC Chris starts off row number 6 by his lonesome. It's 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for semi-final B here at Dragon Trail Seaside, and Kalina with a phenomenal start immediately off the line and jumping up into the lead as they all make their way down towards turn number 2. They come through the right and Kinker 1 and Kalina with a colossal start, and the Aston Martin very strong on the launch, but he's made it work. They all make their way on down, and you can see their Viper going to the inside looking for a move as we've got multiple cars involved in some contact, and a car's been spun there, and it looks as though, I think that's the Audi. No, that's not the Audi, that's Safa who's been put into a tailspin. We'll look back at that very shortly, but D-Man GT with a slow start, and well, we know the Supra's quite a slow starter as they make their way up into turn number 6. You can see the top two immediately breaking away here as they make their way into sector 2. Now D-Man has literally the whole pack chasing him as they come over the ridge and down into turn 7 through to 8, and as they roar on down at this point, I think D-Man's in that very horrible position right now where he's under a huge amount of pressure to push on, and everyone else behind him will be hoping he gets a move on. Alternatively, they'll be looking to try and take the places off of him as our drivers make their way through the medium speed chicane of turns 8 through to 10, and now go roaring on down in towards turn number 12. Now as they come down in towards the braking zone right now, it is the case of Viper under a bit of pressure here from Gillabrin. Gillabrin looks on the inside. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them. I think Viper not expecting Gillabrin to come on through, but it is the case the Supra driver finds his way. They go side by side here into the chicane, and you're going to see Gillabrin backs out. They knows that you can't go 2x2 through here, or you're going to absolutely have the mother of all incidents, and they all make their way through safely this time as everybody comes through the chicane, I do believe, and yep, they do. And as they roar their way down towards turn number 17 to the final corner, you can see Dynamic Gene on the inside of Stiganator here. The Audi R8 driver making some early gains, but Stiganator's going to hold the outside. Gene's going to get it done, however, and gain the position. So after one lap, it is RTA Kalinen leading by 0.2 of a second ahead of GMP. Then we've got a 2.6 second gap to D-Man GT and P3, followed by Dynamic Gene and P4, who's under pressure here from Stiganator and P4 Ollie. P4 Ollie pushing Stiganator forward here. They're trying to utilise their straight line speed and also a little bit of push in order to be able to get past the Audi driver. Dynamic Gene loses 2 places there, now into P6. Then we've got RTA Viper in P7, followed by what is Gillabrin in P8, but it's not going to be long before Viper's under pressure, as we see BKC Chris getting it wrong coming out to turn number 3. They make their way into turn number 5, and as they flick through the right hander, you can see Viper under huge pressure here, going partially defensive into the corner, puts the car in the middle of the road. I think Gillabrin getting a little bit frustrated there at the fact that Viper seems more interested in defending rather than going on the offensive right now, and as they make their way down through 7 and into 8 once again here, you can see no change between these two this time. So it's still Gillabrin in P8, followed by Jenna Ali P9, and then we have got a 2.5 second gap to BKC Chris in P10, and then RTA Safa, who's currently on the charge trying to get back into the fight in P11. Let's take a look back at what happened to Safa at the start of the race. So at the start here, we ride on board with Safa to give you a bit of perspective here, and as he made his way into the corner, so you're going to see he's tucked in to the inside and he brings the car into the middle of the road. He gets hit on the rear, and that sends D-Man GT flying as well, and there was some contact from behind. I think the concertina effect under braking just simply upset the balance of a number of drivers, and well, if we take a look back once again from a third person perspective this time, I think we will see the full story here. So as he was coming on down, I think there's going to be quite a number of drivers who come together in a nose-to-tail fashion, and what you see as they come on down, it is the case that RTA Viper has to take evasive action, and Dynamic Gene coming through that Stiganator as well, and in the end, Safa was the one who ended up being the ultimate victim of the situation. But now we look back to our live pictures, and it is the case that Safa is charging after BKC Chris as they make their way through turn 1 and up towards 2. Can he find a way through versus the Frenchman as they come down? Not this time, but he will later in the lap, I'm sure, go for a move. Meanwhile, up front, it is Kalinen leading still with GMP behind. The two drivers here, both in the Aston Martin as they come through turn number 6. Are looking good so far, with D-Man GT now getting settled down and broken away from Stiganator. It is the case, the BGR driver here really starting to put pedal to the metal. He was our fastest driver in qualifying, to be fair, and it is the case now as he makes his way through 8 and up into 10. He's going to be trying to close up to the leaders. It's going to need a little bit more fuel, but if he can close up, that's going to help him in the latter portion of this race.
Meanwhile, there we can see Pipo Ollie in the Corvette, just understeering a little bit through turn number 10, throwing the car over the crest now and down in towards turn number 12. And behind you see Dynamic Gene battling Gillibrin as well. And it is the case that right now the RDR8 driver really making some ground as Gianni goes to the move versus Viper, then the GT-R, and now that GT-R starting to come alive as we see Gillibrin has passed Dynamic Gene and Gianni has got himself up into P8, and as they make their way through this time, well, that GT-R is going to be very handy through the chicane because it's so heavy that as a result it will be very stable over those curbs and very planted so long as it's turned in. And you can see here Dynamic Gene a bit slow in the run, and as they make their way up, it's the case he just backs out and Gianni gains another position here, and it is going to be the man in the Godzilla machine who gains 2 places on this lap. He almost understeers off a little bit there as he comes out of 70, keeps it together, and as they make their way across the timeline onto lap 4, you can see the Audi R8 driver under a huge amount of pressure right now to try and simply hold on. He's dropping down the order like a stone. I do wonder if there's some damage to the car. No, there's no damage on that Audi R8. It's just not there at the pace anymore. And after what was an absolutely lightning start, as it looks like there's been some contact between Pipo Ollie and Gillibrin. We'll take a look back at that very shortly. But the two drivers have traded blows, and it does mean that Gianni's closing up. And as they make their way through turn 5, Pipo Ollie defends here, and you can see Gianni goes into the inside. And as they come through, it is the case that the GT-R gains another position here, just capitalising on the scrabbling between drivers as they make their way into sector 2. And really right now the top 4 are breaking away, and it's P5 backwards who are battling over P5, P6 at this point in time for qualifying into the final. As you can see, Pipo Ollie just simply now under a huge amount of pressure as that GT-R continues to build ground. As we ride on board here with Gianni as he tries to go for the move here into turn number 12, and I think it's a bit of a defense as well, because as you look back, it's going to be the case he's got Gillibrin on his inside, and as they make their way through, it's the case the 3 drivers stay as they were. RTA Viper now trying to get past Gillibrin. It's going to be a drag race as they come into the chicane of death, and to give you an idea, this is what 2 wide looks like as they come through, and there's contact there, and Viper into the wall, and that's to back out immediately as both drivers get very scrabbly coming through the chicane. Literally the gloves are coming off left, right and centre right now. It's fantastic to see, and so far they've kept it relatively clean. As you can see, Viper here pulling out the way of Safa, who's coming through like a rocket right now, and I think Viper realising that he's had enough of the time being and just waiting to come back a little bit later on, as there's quite a few elbows coming out right now, and some of those elbows a little bit more violent than others. But as they go on to lap number 5, it is the case that these opening laps have been very tense, and there's plenty more to come. As we see Gianni looking for the move here, inside to outside into the chicane. He gets ahead versus Pipo Ollie, and that's where the GT-R just able to soldier on and get on through. But of course later on, that is where the GT-R will start to fall away, is in terms of that tyre wear pickup, and as a result that twin turbo will start to be more violent and more aggressive for the driver. And as he makes his way into turn number 6 right now, Gianni really going to work. But meanwhile, we look from the midfield to up towards the front, and we can see Colleen and GMP still leading. But it is the case they do have one man who is gradually closing up to them, and that is D-Man GT right now, who that gap, he has brought it down a little bit. He's brought it down to 2 seconds as he comes charging on down in towards what is turn number 12 here. Of course, it is oscillating, given the fact that GMP and Colleen are working together. They are trying to break away for a bit of slipstream and navigation around the circuit, but it is the case that D-Man right now continuing to push on, as we do see Stiganator here a further 2.3 seconds back. We then have Gianni in P5 at this point in time, breaking away from Pipo Ollie. In fact, Gianni doing a fantastic job of pulling away and really pulling P5 off into the distance right now. But remember, he's got to brake now, because later on he will start to experience it into the wall. It's Gillibrin. Gillibrin getting it wrong there through the chicane of death and claimed by the corner, and that is going to be engine damage, front suspension and also front aero, and that is very unfortunate for KBR's Gillibrin. Let's take a look back at how it happened. He was battling side by side here in the long run down through the corners as he made his way through the right-hander of turn number 12, where it was going to be the situation, I think, where both drivers, as they came through the right into left of the chicane, well, Gillibrin was ahead, but he just simply understeered a little bit too much into the chicane. They've carried a bit too much speed, and that's what led to him making contact with the wall, and he's now got to have repair work done to the car as he comes into the pits. But now with a fifth of this race complete, we go on to lap number 6, still plenty of time to go. And as our drivers continue to make their way on around, it is the case as they make their way into turn number 8. Well, we can see that Kalinin right now, he's under a bit more pressure from GMP here, and I do think the two RTA drivers may need to consider swapping positions soon. And, well, we can see why, because D-Man GT is continuing to soar like an absolute rocket in that Supra and close up. And I think he'll be thinking right now, if only he hadn't have been contacted into the chicane on the opening lap, in terms of the first chicane, turns 2 and 3, he might have been leading this race right now and pulling it off into the distance. But to be fair, he's very secure in the fact that if he comes home P3, he is guaranteed to qualify for the final as he makes his way through the chicane. Stiganator follows through as well as they all come charging on through here. Then we've got Jun Ali in P5, and then it is Safa right now who has made his way up into P6. Peeper Ollie and RTA Viper. Safa makes contact with the wall there on the exit, and this is going to be Peeper Ollie's opportunity to close up very rapidly as they make the way in the long run down towards turn number 17, and it is the case they make the way into the braking zone. The Belgian not able to capitalise here, and I think that will be a little bit frustrating. He wasn't quite close enough, because right now he does have RTA Viper all over his 6 as they make the way on to lap number 7, and as they come across that time, and I think for Peeper Ollie at this point, he's got to be of one of two minds here. Either he's got to play the conservative race in terms of fuel saving, or he's got to go on the offensive, because he does look a bit stronger as he goes around into the outside here versus Safa, who in the end, whilst he does go defensive, does give Peeper Ollie the ground to play with as they come through the chicane. Now, will Peeper Ollie be able to break away, or will Safa stay right there in the tow for all the time round? Remember, we will be expecting at least one pit stop or one scheduled stop, because those fuel tanks are not going to go all the distance, and those tyres will be in a state of worse wear by the time we get to the midpoint of the race. As you see Safa there just scrambling on exit and getting a little bit of snap oversteer as he came out of turn 6 trying to gain on Peeper Ollie, and instead has to tuck on in. Now, speaking of strategy, it's only a good point in time right now as we are almost a quarter of the way into the race to take a look at the telemetry data so far, and we can see that with regards to Kalinin, looking quite good on tyres at the moment. That front left starting to open up a little bit in the Aston Martin, and it is the case that fuel almost half used, and meanwhile behind we can see that GMP having conserved the tyres a little bit more, running behind his teammate here and having done a similar amount of fuel usage, albeit I think some fuel saving has gone in there. Then we do have what is, well, I apologise for breaking away, ladies and gentlemen, because it's Kalinin who's made contact with the wall. He's just grazed on the exit of the chicane of death, and as a result GMP now takes the lead of this race. We thought it was going to come, and you can see why. I think they've had to make an executive decision. I think the team principal's been on the radio, and that is because D-Man GT is now charging after these guys, absolutely rapid in his pursuit, and as they make their way across that timeline, very shortly it is going to be the case that D-Man GT now only 1.4 seconds and still continuing to close as they make their way down through the right-hander of 1 and up towards 2, 3. Now as they come on down at this point, it is the case in terms of looking at telemetry data, we can see that D-Man GT has had to use quite a bit more fuel compared to the two leaders, and that's understandable given how much he's pushing to close up, and his tyre wear a little bit more on the front, but to be fair, the Supra can take more of its front tyres and still be very competitive compared to the Aston Martin. Meanwhile, our P4 driver Stiganate here in a similar situation, in fact, has used more fuel than D-Man GT, but his tyres are actually slightly better in terms of condition, particularly that front right. He's been protecting the front right a bit more compared to D-Man. And in P5, Jun Ali here, we can see the fuel has actually been quite preserved, and to be fair, the Nissan Gt-R, it may not sound like it when we talk about a twin turbo engine, but it is the case that the Gt-R, because of how strong its turbo is in second through to fourth, this car can be short shifted quite aggressively in order to save fuel and also still gain lap times. So as a result, Jun Ali doing a great job on the fuel, and you can see where the tyre wear is actually quite significant across all 4 tyres, particularly the left-hand side tyres, and that is the weight of the Nissan Gt-R putting in that tyre wear. Meanwhile, we look a bit further down the order here and we see Safa battling with Peeper Ollie and Viper once again. These guys have exchanged places off camera in terms of Safa versus Peeper Ollie, and as we do look at the temperature data, you can see that Safa actually running with a lot of damage on the car. And that's a little bit of a surprise. That may explain why Safa's not able to break away here, because of the aero damage and the suspension damage, which will be costing him about half a second, at least a lap, as he makes his way on down. But we look from him to Viper here, battling side by side with Peeper Ollie as they make the way into turn number 17. Viper on the inside, Peeper on the outside. And as they come through, I think Peeper Ollie is going to give the position for the run down towards turn number 2 here as they go on to another lap. And this is where the GTE driver will come on very strong. You can see him immediately tucking into the toe. He'll be getting the double draft, of course, because the Supra will be hairpin range, and as they make their way down towards turn number 2, it's a long run, but Peabody not pulling out. He's not going for the offensive, or if he is, he's leaving it incredibly late. I think he's been doing some fuel saving instead, and instead just waiting for that opportunity to strike through the pit lane. Of course, it's all about the strategy just as much as it is about the battling on circuit. We look at RTA Viper and we can see there the fuel usage just under half a tank remaining, and in terms of those tyres are looking quite well balanced across all 4, but that wear is picking up, and it is the same for Peabody, who's got some damage on the front of the car as well. I wonder if that's damage both of them picked up at the start of the race with the Concertina incident down into turn number 2. You can see Peabody a little bit more nicer to his fuel compared to Viper, albeit the damage, and particularly those left-hand side tyres, really been worked hard by Peabody. I think the damage may be contributing towards that. P9 driver here, a BKC Chris, just keeping his head down, getting on with things. In his case, using quite a lot of fuel, and the Bmw M6 quite aggressive on its fuel usage, even with short shifting, and you can see that tyre wear quite well balanced. And then we do have here Dynamic Gene, who's just had a major moment, I think, Dynamic Gene, and it is the case they've got more damage to the car. Let's take a look at what happens to the Audi R8 driver. Well, coming through the opening chicane here, turn 2 absolutely fine, turn 3 they're going to go a little bit wide, drop off the curb, the rear left tyre goes into the gravel and into the wall, and that is very unfortunate for Dynamic Gene, who was looking to have some tremendous pace at the start of this race. And well, what about Gillebrin? Well, we can see Gillebrin has put in the fuel, and I think might be trying to go to the end, having gone for an early pit stop to repair the damage to the car after the contact with the chicane of death. But we look from the drives towards the rear of the field up towards the front, and we can see GMP here has got Kalinin still tucked in behind him, but look who's behind the pair of them as GMP gets a little bit sideways, coming out of 2 into 3, getting on the loud pedal a bit too aggressively. And you can see that right now as we ride on board here and look back from the Racing Team Astra driver, it is the case he's got his teammate Kalinin, but then D-Man GT is now right there with the 2 of them as GMP goes a little bit deep there into turn number 6. You can see Kalinin closing, actually having to back off over the apex there, and that's such a frustration when you are the middle guy in a battle of 3 cars. I can tell you from experience, when you are the P2 guy in this situation, it is the case that you want to be as aggressive as possible in chasing down the leader, because you have that constant pressure behind you of the guy in P3 who wants to try and find a way on through. And right now it is the case, I think, for Kalinin. He feels as though he's between a rock and a hard place. He's either got to demolish the rock or find a way to get through the hard place as he comes through turn number 12, and they all make their way on through. But as they roaring out through the hairpin right now, it is the case that they stay in formation, and I think the fuel conservation for some of the drivers here, particularly for D-Man GT, is going to be critical. I think what D-Man may try and do at this point is simply tuck in behind and fuel save his way to victory in terms of the pit stops. But we're expecting those pit stops at the halfway point when they do occur, or perhaps a little bit later. And we did see, of course, the absolute phenomenal pit stop strategy of what was Prelude Gen 04 in what was Pool 4 in the round number 1. In fact, he decided to extend the opening stint and have a short second stint, and we may see some of the drivers do that. So, of course, the midpoint of this race, because it's an odd number of laps, you'd either pit on lap number 12 or lap number 13. I suspect most drivers will try to pit on lap number 13, because then they'll have a slightly shorter stint towards the end. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see, say, D-Man GT go 15 laps before pitting, just to give himself an advantage, as we see Safa into the pits here. And I think Safa's calling the pit stop early. He's had enough of the damage on the car, and we can also see Pipo Ollie into the pits as well. And well, the amount of fuel both of them have used very equal here in both drivers as the teams go to work and servicing their drivers' cars and now putting the fuel on in. Meanwhile, Wes Gillebrin will come for the chicane of death, so he will not be able to capitalise on this, but BKC Chris has definitely capitalised on the situation, roaring on through. Things have spread out a little bit now, and it is the case that in terms of the battles out on circuit, really our closest drivers are our top 3 as they come roaring on through once again. But as we can see here, GMP holding on firm for the time being. It is the case that for GMP, just simply getting on with the job and pressing on all the same as he makes his way down towards turn number 12. As he comes on through in the meantime, going a little bit deep there, and Kalina in fact catching up quite aggressively under braking once again. I do think at this point the Aston Martin drivers are feeling that tyre wear, and it's holding them back now in terms of the pace they want to unleash as they make their way into the chicane of death. And this time all 3 drivers are just so close to the wall there for D-Man GT, but getting a phenomenal run. GMP just grazing the exit wall, and you see Kalina right there with his teammate, and well, he's not going for the move here. And I do think that Kalina right now, he's aware of the fact that if he was to go for the move, it would cost the pair of them time. But this is getting an increasingly difficult situation, and I do wonder whether Team RTA will potentially split the strategies in order to give both drivers the opportunity to run in some clear air at some point, because right now this is not working. As meanwhile Stiganator P4 continues to push on here, and Stiganator in terms of the gap to leaders, we're 6.1 seconds right now, and he is trying to close it up as rapidly as possible. He's got a long way to go, and he does have Gianelli, who continues to close lap after lap, the Nissan Gt-R driver. I think Gianelli at this point feeling very confident that that P5 is in the bag. We'll have to wait and see on the strategy, of course, and it's not over until the checkered flag falls. I think he'll first, if he can keep this pace up, it is going to be a guaranteed spot in that final. As meanwhile, RTA Viper P6, BKC Chris P7, and then we've got Safa, who has come out ahead of Pipa Ollie when all is said and done here, as they make their way out of turn number 17. They, of course, have pitted already. They've done repair work to the car as well. And they'll be looking to run in this clear air on fresh tyre and a full tank of fuel to gain themselves some lap time and gain themselves some overall race time and close back up to the drives up ahead. But it's going to be a long run for these two in terms of going to the end on that set of soft tyres right now, given the fact they both pitted come the end of lap number 10. But we will wait and see. But looking back up towards the front, we can see the top three as they were, as they make the way up towards the chicane of death once again. And as they come on through turns 13 and 14, now to 15, 16 here, the aforementioned chicane. All three drivers getting through there, but Kalinen tapping the wall. And again, whilst it won't be significant damage to the car, just a scratch, that is, of course, just a little bit of a knock to the nerves. Every time you graze the wall, it is a knock to the nervous system, in the fact that next time it could be the wall, it could be the chicane of death that claims you, as they make the way out of turn number 17. And they'll all be on absolute edge as they make their way on towards lap number 13. None of the three peeling into the pits. What about Stiganator? Does he peel on in? He does indeed. So he decides to buck the trend and come on in just as the midpoint of the race approaches. Gianelli does the same here, tying himself to Stiganator, but with 5% more fuel in the car, Gianelli may have a shorter stop by comparison. RTA Viper also comes on in. What about BKC Chris? Will he peel on in, or will he decide to stay out and take track position? I think he's going to stay on out based on that line. And as he comes on through, it is the case that the BMW driver will go up to P4 for the time being as he makes his way across that timing line here. Now, in terms of fuel input, it is the case that it is, if I remember correctly, 4 litres a second. It's maybe even 3 litres a second, but Stiganator already serviced the car, as has Jun Ali. And, well, we can see where have they come out. We can see Stiganator here, and then Jun Ali a little bit further back, in fact. I think Jun Ali's actually put more fuel in the car compared to Stiganator, and has decided instead to max it up on fuel and perhaps go all in and decide to rev it out there. And to be fair, he can do it, but at the same time, I think the Nissan Gt-R driver has lost quite a bit of time to Stiganator. The gap was 2 seconds. It's opened up by a further second. He's now got to close that down. We know Janali can do it, but he hasn't got long. He's got one more stint to do it, coming on through on lap number 13. Meanwhile, where is Pipa Ollie? He's got ahead of Viper. I'm wondering if Viper's had an accident somewhere on circuit, because, well, these two have been back and forth all the way through. I think Viper's made a mistake, and in terms of gaining, well, you can see it's the case. Well, Safa is only... well, he's 2.1 seconds up the road, so Pipa Ollie and Viper running that clear air and deciding to pit very early have gained some race time, but remember, Safa on a much fresher set of tyres. And that tyre freshness will be with him towards the end of the race. But meanwhile, as we go through the end of lap 13, it is the case, I can tell you, the top three of their pit crews have come out. As we can see, all three of them making their way in. D-Man GT, however, has used up more fuel compared to his peers at this point. They are all in, and it is the case. It's all going to be about the battle of the pit stops here and who is going to gain. I believe BKC Chris will likely be coming in at the end of this lap, as we're looking at a leader right now of Kalinen as a service in the car. Who won the fuel? Well, there comes GMP, so GMP will take the lead of the race back once he emerges out onto circuit. Kalinen not too far behind, and then it is going to be a D-Man GT once again. So they are as they were, but it is the case the Supra driver has lost a second on his peers in the fact he's had to take on some more fuel in the pits. Meanwhile, Stiganator comes on through to retake P4 with BKC Chris into the pits, Janai P5, and it's going to be RTA Safa P6. Then we can see battling for P7 right now. Pipa Ollie versus Viper as they make their way into turn number 1. These two, I think every time you look at them, they're together. Why is it always you two? Well, that's because they love racing one another. And as they come through turns 2 and 3, through the first chicane here, you can just see the two Corvette drivers in a battle of their own. It does mean they're depriving themselves of that opportunity for the final qualifying spot. But I think at the same time, in the racing action here, we do love to see it as they make their way on through the right-hander of turn number 5 and up into 6. Now, for those of you in the chat right now, with regards to the rest of this race, be sure to let me know your predictions, who you think is going to win out of GMP, Kalinen or D-Man GT. Do you think the Aston Martin drivers have got it in the bag, or do you think the Supra will come out of nowhere and deploy it towards the end? And also, who out of Pipa Ollie and Viper is going to win out these two? Because every time they're together, they seem to be always battling for P7 as they make their way through turn number 11 and down towards 12 as they charge on down the hill here and looking very fast and furious. As we can see, Pipa Ollie going defensive, not wanting to give Viper the ground, but Viper's going to go all the way around the outside. He's got the grip to do so on those tyres. The marble's also there, and as he makes his way on through, it's going to be side by side. Going up into 13 and 14. Viper gets ahead. People, Ollie backs out there. He could have made it too wide all the way up into the chicane of death. I think both drivers not wanting to risk it as they make their way up towards 17 here. Great battling between these two. Meanwhile, as we look to them going in towards turn number 17 and no return move from Peabody this time around, we look further up the road and we see our race leader GMP. He's 1.4 seconds clear of Kalinin, and Kalinin 2 seconds clear of D-Man GT as they make the way on around and onto their first flying lap since going for that pit stop, and now they'll be looking to set the best possible laps as they make the way on around. And I do think that D-Man GT has got perhaps the biggest task of the three if he wants to try and take the win of this race, or at least get himself up into the second step of the podium as he makes his way on around. Meanwhile, P4 Stiganator here has opened up a bit more of a gap to Gianelli. It's opened up to 3.4 seconds, so it is the case the GT-R driver at this point. I think it might be they're just settling down into a rhythm here and looking to bring the car home in P5 in a firm position, which would guarantee that placement in the final. As we see there, RTA Safa P6 right now, the last of the qualifying positions, and as he makes his way down into turn number 8, looking very good and comfortable right now is Safa. He is charging after Gianelli, and in terms of the fastest lap, it does belong to Safa right now. The Toyota Supra driver has previously set a 36.6, a very fast lap here in race trim as he makes his way down towards turn number 12. But as he comes on down right now, the closest battle out on the circuit is that battle for P7, albeit this time they decide they don't want to make it too wide through turn number 12, and that is RTA Viper and GTB's P4 as they come through the corner and head up towards 13 through to 16. Now, as they make their way through the right into left here of what is 13 and 14, and now coming into the chicane death once more, we look to the chat here as we see, oh goodness me, people Ollie grazing the wall very heavily, and I'm amazed that is not aero damage on the front of the car. Very fortunate then not to pick up formal damage as he makes his way down into the final corner here, but Peabody definitely pushed it to the limit and a little bit beyond what I think the car can take as he makes his way out of the corner, and well, he closes back up to Viper on the exit there, but these two literally on the limit lap after lap. And then we do have here BKC Chris, who after his pit stop does have Gillebrin close behind, and you can see it is the case the South African driver here chasing down the Frenchman in the battle for P9. And BKC Chris, to be fair, he's not been quite on the pace, but you can't take it away from him the fact that the M6 has been very consistent and it hasn't really put a foot wrong. Of course, that doesn't really give him any prize at the end of the day in terms of getting into the final, but I think he can take a pat on the back with regards to he's just been keeping it together here, and will Gillebrin give him pursuit right now. We can see that the Supra driver here losing out quite considerably in the run down towards turn number 2, and I do wonder for Gillebrin whether the same wrong with the car, because he had a very slow run there and lost out massively in the charge down towards turn number 2. I think it's the case that Gillebrin just simply feeling the pinch of those front tyres and the amount of wear he's built up, having made a very early pit stop compared to his peers, because of course he picked up that engine damage from the chicane of death on what was lap number 7 if I remember correctly, and that's when he pitted. So as he makes his way out of turn number 6 and trying to make these tyres last what is effectively the best part, if my maths serves me correctly, of 19 laps or 18 laps, well no, my apologies, 18 laps in fact. It is the case South African driver's still got a long way to go, and let's not forget of course Dynamic Gene down in P11 in the Audi R8, where it's just not worked out for Gene, albeit with a fresh car now trying to get home to the end. And we look into the chat then, we can see Sir Bottlejob commenting on the battle between Viper and People Ollie, saying it'll definitely be a Corvette driver. Well, that is a very astute observation given they're both driving Corvette C7s. I do like the humour there, that's absolutely great to see. And it does look as though Viper is just starting to break away a little bit from People Ollie here, and I think it might be the case the Greek driver has finally got the upper hand versus the Belgian, but we will wait and see whether that's the case when we get to that checkered flag. But meanwhile, further up the road, what I can tell you is that Gianelli, in fact, really not happy with the pace of the car right now. That last lap from Gianelli in the Gt-R of 37.4. Meanwhile, for Safa, I think it was the fastest lap of the race, 36.5. No, it wasn't quite the fastest lap, it was the lap before, but Safa at 36.9, taking the time left, right and centre out of Gianelli as they make the way out to turn number 6 and down towards turn number 8 here. And as they come into the medium speed chicane, I think it is the case that right now for Safa doing everything right as they make the way on through the sequence of corners. And as they come roaring on through the chicane and head up towards turns 11 and 12, I think it's going to be one of those situations whereby for Safa right now, he will feel as though that P5 is firmly within his sights. But remember, they're both battling for what is just positions that will still enable them to qualify for the final. So I think this battle between the two of them is just as much a little bit of a sparring match as it is on the line as they make the way through 13 and 14 up towards the chicane of death this time. Now as they come on through, of course, Safa will be very wary of the fact that he is going to be dealing with a GT-R that almost hit the exit wall there, and it is the case that Gianelli right on the limit in terms of pushing that car through to the finish. Meanwhile, we look up the road, and I can tell you that our race leader at GMP is continuing to hold that gap. In fact, he's opened up by another 10 since we last looked at it, to 1.7 seconds versus RTA Kalinin, who makes his way out towards turn 2 now, and there's a 2-second gap to D-Man GT, who in P3 is now starting to close up. Now the Supra driver here, I think what it is for D-Man, he feels as though he's got the better pace in the second half of his stint, where that tyre wear becomes a noticeable factor with that times 3 tyre wear and the racing soft tyre. Pushing on through turn number 5 and up into 6 here, looking good, the BGR driver right now as he continues to push, but of course he's got a long way to go here. It's 8 laps including this lap remaining, and as he makes his way on down the hill and in towards turn 8, he'll just be continuing to nip and tuck and take little bits out of the Aston Martin's advantage as he makes each and every lap. We look from him to a Gt-R that's trying to break away from a pursuing Toyota Supra, and that is Gianelli who's trying to hold an advantage, which he's opened back up a little bit to almost 1.2 seconds, but RTA Sapper definitely firmly having the fellow South African in his sights as they make their way on through. But as they come through the left-hander at turn number 10 and head down towards turn number 12 at this point in time, it is the case as the drivers come roaring on down. No real change at the moment. It's just interesting to see where it could be the case that Safari is gaining versus Gianelli as they make their way on out at turn number 12. And I think it is all within the corners themselves. I think it is the case. Anytime we've got a heavy braking zone transitioning into a second or a third gear corner, that's where Safa just able to get back on the power a little bit more confidently compared to the GT-R in front of him. But you can see there retrospectively through the chicane of depth, Gianelli able to use the weight of the Nissan Gt-R to carry a lot more speed through the chicane, and that's where he's gained. He's able to carry more speed through those tight sequences where it's a high speed section because he's got the confidence and the weight of the car and he's able to exploit the curves a bit more. It's an interesting dynamic. It's definitely why that GT-R is right up there and why Gianelli is mastering the art of using that GT-R to keep him well up the field as he makes his way up towards turn number 2 on lap number 19. Meanwhile, the battle for P7, I can definitely tell you that it's the case Viper is continuing to break away from GTV's Peter Ollie right now. The gap now up to 1.3 seconds, almost 1.4 there, but it's the case Viper having a bit of a slow exit out of turn number 17 compared to Peter Ollie as they make their way through the first of the chicanes, once again through turns 2 and 3, and as he makes his way a little bit wide there, just a very small mistake, but be fair, he kept the car under control. In fact, he's gained from running a little bit wide. He's been able to keep the car settled. I think Peter Ollie not having the best of runs through the opening chicane either, and that explains why the GTV driver is falling back little by little as he makes his way on around in that V8 engine naturally aspirated Corvette as he comes charging on down and into turn number 8. As he rolls on through, we do a look here to BKC Chris, who, well, to be fair, Chris has broken away from Gilla Bryn, and I do wonder whether Bryn's had a bit of a moment where I think he definitely has. I think that tyre wear has built up considerably and it is not going the way of the KBR driver right now, who had a mammoth task on his hands, and that task I think is going too much for him to get back into the top 6 come the end of tonight as he makes his way into turn number 6 right now. But meanwhile, we look down to Dynamic Gene here, continues to soldier on and trying to close up to Gilla Bryn. And I think right now closing up approximately about second a lap here, so it could be the case that Dynamic Gene is there towards the end, albeit that tyre wear is building up on the Audi R8 as he makes his way down to the medium speed chicane of turns 8 through to 10. But we look from him back up to our leader here of GMP, who has opened that gap to clean to 2.3 seconds now as they make their way on through the opening chicane. In fact, a gap now coming back down to 2.1. GMP is opening that gap up though, that's the key point, and Kalinin here still being reeled in by D-Man GT. Now that gap coming down between these two, only about a tenth to 2 tenths a lap here, and D-Man GT definitely now starting to gain that advantage as the tyre wear accumulates. But it is the case, I think he didn't do himself any favours by deciding to pit with the Aston Martins. I think if he perhaps gone 1 lap earlier, or alternatively gone 1 lap later, he could have tried to just push a little bit more in terms of an undercut. Alternatively, just had a bit of fresher tyre towards the end. It just doesn't seem as though he's quite there yet, and I think he's hoping that tyre wear will come forward a little bit sooner for Kalinin and GMP, but I don't think he's going to have enough laps in the day, because right now, if he wanted to catch up to leader, it's a 4.1 second gap, almost 4.2 seconds as they exit out of turn number 12. I think it would be the case with D-Man. He'd be having to close down by approximately 7 to 8 tenths a lap to be in an attacking position on the final lap, and well, I don't think D-Man's going to be able to achieve that. I think he may have to settle for P3 at this point. It just doesn't seem to be coming towards him. Meanwhile, Stiganator in P4, he does have that Nissan Gt-R. Gianelli closing, and Safa closing massively through the second sector from what we're hearing as they make their way in for it. Safa collides with the wall there, just a gentle collision to be fair there. When I say collides, it sounds catastrophic, but it's more of a graze. But Safa is pushing as hard as he possibly can to close down Janali here, and it is the case our top 6 in a little bit of a world of their own right now as they make the way on through and go into the final 5th of this race, as we are 80% complete and only 5 more laps to go, and everybody continues to push on here. I think right now for Safa it's all about trying to deliver at the final point in time as he makes his way on to lap 21. The gap between himself and Janali, 1.2 seconds. It's not closing right now. It'll be in sector 2 where he'll close up the most, and also for this opening chicane, if he nails it spot on, he can take a little bit more speed, but Janali gets a very nice exit out of the chicane, and the two are equal in terms of their performance through sector 1 so far as they make their way through turn number 5 there. Safa literally cutting every part of that apex, which you can do, but you've got to be so careful of not clipping the edge of the curb with a tyre head on, because it will launch the car up into the air, and the Safa comes roaring on down now and in towards turn number 8. You can see just continuing to close down Janali as they roll on through the sequence of corners here, and looking very good as Janali gets it a little bit sketchy there coming through turn number 9. The rear just coming loose slightly, and as they make their way through 10, this is where Safa's able to close up. He's got so much more confidence in the stability of the car coming through the middle sector, and as they make their way through turn number 12 and head through towards 13 and through to 16 in towards the chicane of death they go, you can see he's almost there into the slipstream, not quite, he's 200ths off, but as they make their way through this time, I think it's going to be the case that it's all about Janali getting a perfect run. He does indeed, and Safa nails it as well. In fact, he is now there, he is in the tow, only for a brief while however, because it is Janali who gets the better run, but Safa will now know come the next lap he should be there and within striking distance. Meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that I think Kalinen's had a moment. I think Kalinen's hit the wall because he has dropped down. Well, no, he's made a mistake somewhere, but it is the case that right now Kalinen is down to P3. Let's try and see where that happened. Well, we've missed it. It must have been at the chicane of death because D-Man had already passed him coming into turn 17. I think Kalinen may have got it wrong and perhaps had to lift off the throttle in order to avoid hitting the wall, but there has been a change of position, and it's now D-Man GT up to P2 here, but with a gap of 5.5 seconds to GMP. I think D-Man at this point will be just looking to consolidate that P2, and a well-deserved P2 at that. Meanwhile, further down the road, I can tell you that Janali now does have Safa all over his 6 as they come out of turn number 6 and go right into the middle sector, and this is where we will see the Toyota Supra behind us. We ride on board with Janali looking back from the Gt-R driver. This is where the Supra will shine as they make their way through turns 9 and 10 and coming over the crest shortly. You can see Janali just having a fight with the steering wheel, the car not wanting to turn when you've got that direction change between turns 9 and 10, and that's where Safa is just able to close. He's got more turning on the front, and as they make their way down to turn number 12, it is the case we can see Safa continuing to build, continuing to close, and as they roar on down there and down towards the chicane of death they come here. Now he will experience the dirty air of the back of the Gt-R, the beast which punches a hole in the air for the Supra as they roll on through the chicane of death. This time both tries to make it on through, very comfortably there, but Safa has to lift off, and then he loses half a second. In fact, he's lost 7/10 of a second from having to lift off there, and Safa just a little bit upset, I think, in terms of the car and the balance of the aerodynamics in the car due to the dirty air off that Gt-R. He knows he can't afford to make that mistake again because it could be fatal. Right now, he's very firmly going to be qualifying for the final here, and RTA Viper, who's broken away from P-Voli, is still the best part of 7.5 seconds down the road. As we see P-Voli in P8 runs a little bit wide there at the final corner as they go on to lap number 23, but we will have to wait and see between these drivers as BKC Chris comes through the chicane of death now, rolling on through, and then we do have Gillibrin who's under pressure here from Dynamic Gene, and I think it's for Gillibrin it is the case those tyres have had enough and he is feeling the pinch here as we do see the Audi driver trying to find his way on through in the battle for P10 in the closing stages of this race. As they both come through and into the chicane of death, they flow through the corner here, the Audi tucking on in and looking to try and gain from the slipstream of the Toyota as they make their way down towards turn number 17. Now, as they come roaring on down at this point, I think for Dynamic Gene, what he's got to look at doing is getting the best possible run out of this corner, literally being the wheel tracks there of the Supra, though he goes a little bit sideways, a bit of oversteer on exit, but he's settled it down, and he's right there where he needs to be, because on the straight here, the Supra will have the straight line speed advantage initially, but Gene will gain by being in the tow, and you can see he's gained now, not a rapid rate loss, but this is what he needs, and if he can stay this close for a bit later, Gillibrin goes defensive briefly, and then realises the Audi's not close enough to capitalise, and instead Gene decides to back off and wait for for another opportunity. You can see it is the case as they come through at turn number 3 and head up towards 5 and 6. It is one of situations now where the Audi driver will need to pounce through the middle sector. If he can't do it into turn 6, he needs to get the best possible run through here and then gain all the time through the medium speed chicane at turns 8 through to 10. And you can see he gets a good run there. It's not quite enough, but it is the case. The Audi R8 looking very close, looking very flexible as they make the way into turn number 8. It's Gillibrand who goes a little bit high in the apex curve there of 8, and as they fly on through, well, you can see the body language of the car. Gillibrand literally left, right and centre. Meanwhile, Gene just a little bit more composed, and as they come down towards what is turn number 12, it's going to be a move on the inside here from the Audi R8 as they come on into the braking zone. And well, I think it's going to be a traditional pass. Gillibrand will try and hold the outside and cut back, but it's not quite there, and it is the case that Dynamic Gene has gained the position of a Gillibrand in the closing stage. They're battling for P10. They will both still be eliminated if they finish where they are currently, but I think it is all about a little bit of pride on the line as they make the way on through. You can see Gillibrand right on the back here of Dynamic Gene as they come down towards turn number 17. They roll on through and Gillibrand goes up the inside here, and he's got the right. The Supra driver will have the straight line speed, and well, Gene I think just has to simply wait and cut back and go racing once again as they go on to the penultimate lap. Speaking of that penultimate lap, GMP continues to lead right now by a 5.5 second margin ahead of D-Man GT, who has dropped Kalinin quite considerably since we last looked, and the gap now up to 3 seconds. We've got Stiganator P4 who is being reeled in very gradually by Jun Ali, and then we do have RTA Safa, who's now the best part of what is 4 seconds back and not closing. I think Safa's made a couple of mistakes and just lost out, and instead now focusing on just bringing that car to its conclusion as he makes his way on around. But the leader goes on to the final lap here. GMP takes the white flag, and it is time for the 25th lap out of 25 as he takes us around. One more lap separates him from the win here and a qualifying position in the final, and all of our drivers will now be looking to give it their utmost to wrap on a high. As we can see, RTA Viper here, P7, 4.8 seconds off of Safa, 8 seconds clear of GTB's Peeper Ollie, and I think at this point 9, that it's not going to be enough unless by some divine intervention one of the drivers up front has an absolutely nightmarish final lap. Peeper Ollie the same here with BKC Chris down in P9, and it's Gillibrand battling once again with Dynamic Gene as they come down into turn number 12. And well, we saw this before, the Audi driver on the inside, the Supra on the outside, and this time Gillibrand tries to find the cutback, but Gene just simply parks on the apex and says no you don't, and as they make the way up towards turns 13 through to 16, both drivers say this is the closest battle on circuit, and as they roll on through and come in towards the chicane of death, well, both of them will be looking composed, but Gene hits the wall and Gillibrand has to take evasive action immediately, and I think that will be the case. Gillibrand will go for the move, and well, you can see there the Audi driver tucking in immediately behind, but to no avail, and now Gillibrand will try to bring it home with one more lap separating him from what is P10 as they come out of the final corner and go on to said lap. But meanwhile, we look from them to our leader as he makes his way. He's made his way through the chicane of death successfully, and it is the case. Well, it's been a standout performance from the start, a great start added to by literally a flawless drive from start to finish, and as he comes out the final corner, it's only a couple hundred meters to the finish line, and your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, as he makes his way on through, will be Racing Team Astra's GMP from Italy, who takes the win by 5.6 seconds in semi-final B ahead of BGR's D-Man GT58. A great drive from the Super driver in P2, and then RTA's Kalinin will complete our podium, P3 for the Greek, and it'll be RTA Stiganator who comes home P4 in the Supra as he makes his way across the line just ahead of Janali in P5 there in the Nissan Gt-R. RTA Safa will take home P6 and take home the final qualifying position from this lobby for the final, and it'll be RTA Viper, the Greek, who's just missed out in the MP7 with Peeper Ollie a further 8.5 seconds behind, although I think both RTA Viper and GTV's Peeper Ollie will have enjoyed their battle together for P7, Peeper Ollie P8, and it'll be BKC Chris here who, as he soldiers on the BMW M6 and makes his way to the finish line. A bit of time to go before he gets there. Well, it wasn't to be his day today. He wasn't quite on the pace, but to be fair, the one thing he can give himself on the pat on the back, he's had a flawless race. He hasn't done anything wrong throughout, and as he makes his way to the timeline here to complete his race, it will be P9 for BKC Chris from France as he crosses the line in the BMW M6, and then it will be KBR's Gillibrand as he makes his way to the final corner here. I think he's dropped Dynamic Gene in the end, They finally settled their differences, and it is the case the KBR driver and the Supra has taken home the final top 10 position. Although he's run out of fuel on the finish line. I think he's literally just run out of fuel with only meters to go, and that means the Dynamic G takes P10, and that is a sad way for it to all end after a fantastic battle and after having to pull off a mammoth second stint. Gilabrin, last of our drivers due to running out of fuel. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but a special congratulations to our race winner, GMP from Team RTA Italy. Well, a fantastic race from start to finish, ladies and gentlemen. Great battles, particularly at the start where we saw numerous drivers coming together and a bit of an instant through turns 2 and 3, which I think the stewards may have to take a look at and dissect exactly what happened. But at the same time, a great race in action. And well, what a great semi-final to have for round number 2. And here are your race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. In the end, it was Team RTA's GMP who brought home the win, 5.6 seconds clear of BGR's D-Man GT58, and the podium being rounded off by RTA Kalinem. Outside of the podium, but completing the top 5, RTA Stiganator and Jun Ali. And then our 6th place man, taking home the final qualifying position for the final in a week's time, that is RTA Safa. Finishing outside our top 6 and therefore being eliminated before going into the final is RTA Viper, GTB Peeper Ollie, BKC Chris, Dynamic Gina completes our top 10, and then KBR's Gilabrin, whose race did not go as planned with the contact with the chicane, the death on lap number 7, seeing him have to take that engine damage and repair work. But to be fair, to make the tyres and the car last almost a whole 18 laps, ran out of fuel just before the finish line. It's painful, but a valiant effort. The fastest lap there being set by RTA Safa, our P6 finisher in the Supra, a 1:36.502, as set on lap 15 after he came out the pits on fresh tyres and a full tank of fuel. Well, what a fantastic race. We said it before and we say it again, a fantastic race from start to finish, and we look forward to the final in the future, ladies and gentlemen. And indeed, I think all our races will have been very grateful for. It was an intense race at Dragon Trail Seaside. But in the end, it's only 6 that can go through, and those 6 will be combined with our top 6 finishers in semi-final A to go into that final. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about Racing Team Astra, that's Team RTA, then why not check them out, because they're the ones who brought forward and are hosting this invitational event for 2022 on Gran Turismo Sport. Feel free to check them out at the Racing Team Astra Facebook page. That is facebook.com/racing.team.astra. Alternatively, if you are an Instagram user, you can check them out at their Instagram, which is instagram.com/racing_team_Astra. But for now, we must look ahead to the final in a week's time, and it will be on Saturday the 26th of February 2022. 12 drivers will be in this final. We started off with just over 50 drivers. We were going into the final with only 12, and it will take place at the Circuit des Soirs Francorchamps on Saturday the 26th of February 2022 at the same time as tonight's broadcast. Be there at 6:45 for all the race in action live, but until then we can only wait and salivate at the prospect of what is to be and who will be our RTA Invitational winner for 2022. Until then, we have been Racing Team Astra. I have been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. And if you have enjoyed, be sure to let us know in the YouTube or the Twitch chat. But until next time, have a great end to your weekend. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.